Picture this. You are standing in the pitch-black, freezing cold of a prehistoric night, huddled closely around a crackling campfire. The year is 50,000 BC. There are no smartphones vibrating in your pocket, no endless work emails piling up in an inbox, and no digital distractions to fuel your existential dread. There is only you, the terrifying shadows of the wilderness, the dancing flames, and a thick, choking column of pungent smoke blowing directly into your face. To a modern human, this sounds like a minor annoyance. But then, a bizarre revolutionary thought strikes one of your primitive ancestors as they wipe the ash from their eyes. What if I did this on purpose? This is not the story of modern cigarettes, corporate monopolies, or corner convenience stores. This is the mind-bending history of the very first time a human being looked at a burning plant and decided to intentionally breathe it into their lungs. As it turns out, our species' obsession with smoking did not start with global trade routes, colonial empires, or even the dawn of agriculture. The drive to inhale smoke might actually be hardwired into our biology on a level so primitive that it predates human civilization entirely. And the archaeological proof behind this theory is absolutely wild. To truly understand how we started smoking, we first have to look at how we tamed fire itself. Deep within the Wonderwerk cave in South Africa, scientists uncovered definitive evidence of controlled fire dating back roughly 1 million years. At that point in history, we weren't even Homo sapiens yet. This was the era of Homo erectus, our early human relatives who possessed smaller brains, heavier brows, and an absolute necessity for survival. For hundreds of thousands of years, every single one of our ancestors sat downwind of a campfire, breathing in smoke on a daily basis. It was unavoidable. It was constant. It was basically the original air quality situation, and nobody had an app to check it. But here is the twist that standard history books rarely mention. Some of that smoke wasn't just ordinary wood. When you burn wild vegetation, you don't just get carbon dioxide and ash. You get a complex chemical cocktail of psychoactive compounds, alkaloids, and terpenes, depending entirely on what species of plant you throw into the logs. Translation: our ancestors were accidentally getting high around the campfire for millennia, with absolutely no idea why they suddenly felt amazing. They didn't choose the habit. Their evolutionary biology chose it for them. The human brain naturally contains a complex network called the endocannabinoid system, filled with receptors that perfectly interact with compounds found in specific plants. When that first prehistoric hunter accidentally breathed in the fumes of a burning cannabis bush or a wild tobacco leaf, their brain didn't panic. It unlocked. It was a perfect lock-and-key mechanism that had been waiting for an accidental spark. If you find it fascinating how deep our hidden human instincts go, hit that subscribe button right now. We unlock historical mysteries just like this every single week, and you won't want to miss the next one. Now, back to the prehistoric smoke. There is a massive difference between accidentally inhaling campfire smoke and purposefully cultivating a plant just to burn it. For centuries, historians argued over exactly when that evolutionary line was crossed. Then, in the isolated, wind-swept Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, archaeologists unsealed a 2,500-year-old ritual burial site that changed everything. Inside the tombs, they discovered ancient wooden braziers containing superheated stones covered in a distinct, charred residue. When scientists analyzed the chemical signature, they found cannabis. But this wasn't wild hemp used for making ropes or clothing. The analysis revealed that this specific strain had unusually high levels of THC. It was the good stuff, selected and cultivated specifically for its mind-altering potency, then burned in an enclosed space for people to inhale. This discovery perfectly vindicated the ancient Greek historian Herodotus. Writing in the 5th century BC, he described a nomadic tribe of fearsome warriors called the Scythians. Herodotus claimed they would build small, airtight felt tents, heat up rocks until they glowed, throw hemp seeds onto them, and sit inside the dark enclosure, inhaling the thick, swirling vapor. He wrote that they would literally howl with pleasure during these rituals. For generations, modern academics assumed Herodotus was simply exaggerating or misunderstanding foreign customs. But the dirt doesn't lie. The archaeology matched his ancient journals perfectly. Yet, when most people think of smoking today, cannabis isn't the first thing that comes to mind. It's tobacco. Tobacco belongs to the genus Nicotiana, a plant family native entirely to the Americas. This geographic detail matters enormously, because it means tobacco was completely unknown to the ancient civilizations of Europe, Africa, and Asia until the late 15th century. When Christopher Columbus and his crew landed in the Caribbean in 1492, they were hit with massive culture shock. They watched indigenous men and women walking around the beaches with glowing sticks made of rolled, dried leaves, casually blowing smoke out of their noses and mouths. Early European journals actually described it as drinking smoke, because they had no word in their vocabulary for inhalation. Naturally, within a few weeks, the European sailors tried it themselves, fell under the spell of nicotine, and brought the habit back across the Atlantic. One of Columbus's crew members, a man named Rodrigo de Jerez, became the first European smoker in history. When he returned home to Spain and casually blew smoke out of his mouth in public, the local townspeople were horrified. The Spanish Inquisition actually threw him in prison for 7 years because they believed he was possessed by the devil. But by the time he was released, the habit had already spread like wildfire across the continent. But tobacco's true history in the Americas runs thousands of years deeper than European arrival. And in those ancient cultures, smoking was never a casual, everyday recreation. It was deeply sacred. Tobacco was weaponized as a spiritual tool used in intensive healing rituals, high-stakes tribal agreements, and direct communication with the divine. Blowing smoke on someone was viewed as a profound blessing of protection and respect. A shaman who smoked wasn't taking a casual break to relieve stress. He was opening a psychological channel between the living and the spirit world. The rising smoke itself was considered a living carrier, physically lifting human prayers upward into the heavens and bringing visions downward. Because it was sacred, the practice was highly disciplined, strictly controlled, and reserved for specific moments of high importance. You didn't chain smoke it while walking down the street. The concept of tobacco as a casual habit, something you do on a lunch break, at a party, or while waiting for a bus, is an entirely European invention, and a relatively recent one at that. So just how far back does our relationship with this plant actually go? In 2019, a team of researchers digging in the Great Salt Lake Desert of Utah uncovered an artifact that completely rewrote our historical timelines. They excavated a primitive hearth used by nomadic hunter-gatherers over 12,000 years ago, right at the end of the last ice age. Preserved perfectly, inside the ancient ash were the charred seeds of wild tobacco. These weren't random seeds blown in by the desert wind. They were intensely concentrated in a way that proved deliberate human placement. This single discovery pushed the timeline of human-tobacco interaction back by millennia, long before our ancestors ever invented pipes, pottery, or standard farming. Long before we built major cities, invented written languages, or mapped the stars, we were sitting together in the pitch black, throwing strange plants into the fire, and watching the smoke rise into the night sky. What started as a prehistoric accident evolved into a global phenomenon that shaped empires, defined sacred rituals, and altered human chemistry forever.